so I jumped feet first into that.
And it can like be a normal day, and suddenly, oh, that time when I did that.
Hi everybody, thanks for listening in to this second episode of the Ronnie and Sofie podcast. Today we are continuing the interview we had with Dr. Helen Julia Minors, so listen in, enjoy.
Do you have any tips on how parents can bring more music into their children's lives?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think the top tip's variety. Anything that a kid hears, like I say, our brains are sponges, we take it in. If we only hear sort of Western popular music, that becomes the norm. But if we also hear, Indian classical music, or we start to listen to music from Singapore or from wherever, actually, I think that's really important because it gets our ears used to different forms of musical literacies. So we're more likely to accept difference if we hear and see it more often. So seeing and hearing music from different cultures, from different peoples, I think is really important. And certainly this must be one of the reasons I ended up wanting to go into music, because none of my family were musicians, but my mum always had on different recordings. Loads of ABBA was on in the house. She'd sing and dance to it. But she made a point of making sure we listened to lots of different music across the globe, that I saw different faces across the globe. So people who didn't look and sound like me as well were a normal thing that we'd have on the radio, or when someone was on the TV, she'd make sure she put it on. It's easier now because of Spotify and YouTube. We can search quite easily, and Spotify has loads of different lists, don't they, for music for children, music for families, or world music and what have you. So I've got mine set that it actually gives me sort of picks of the week and options of the day. Some of what it knows I listen to all the time, but then I always have it so there's coming up with things I wouldn't hear otherwise, so that I listen to it. So I just see it as traveling around the world. That's partly what I say in my radio show. You do travel and go on this journey without having to leave your seats, and you can experience different cultures through it. So I just find that fascinating, really. So definitely listen to different music, but I think trying to make music out of whatever you've got, found instruments, found sounds.
I like that. Yeah,
the noise, because even before we spoke and wrote as a species, we sang, we made noise, we beat things. We know in museums with the resource we were using stones and wood and making drums and making things we could communicate across distance with sirens and things, using shells, which, the idea of the mouthpiece coming from that led to the modern day trumpet and things like that. So just making sure the hands-on experiential approach. And I have an issue with some sort of foundation level music training, that there's this notion of right or wrong. I always actually there isn't. There's rules imposed latterly. So if someone's teaching classical harmony, they start talking about perfect cadence. Well, that's imposed. That whole idea we're looking back and labeling it is because historians looked at what Bach did, blah 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 blah. Very simply put. But actually breaking the rules creates something new. So if you're looking at harmony and jazz and how that happens, someone's not sat down writing it down. I've done it, and then something about it later. So just allow to happen, and whatever it sounds like, well done, reassurance, positive feedback, because it grows confidence, and then it will become good, and it'll be their own voice rather than it being pigeonholed into what's already happening. Because I think we're also desperate to sort of look the same or have the best fashion. Everybody seems to want the latest phone. I say everybody, I don't get this. Want the latest phone, the latest TV, and everybody ends up with the same stuff. I'm just like,
too alike,
different, Yeah, so just to facilitate whatever your little one wants to do is, I think, really, really important.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
One of my friends, when his daughter was born, he bought her a kid's version of the Foo Fighters, and it's played on like xylophone and percussion, because he loves the Foo Fighters. He's tattooed all over the place and decided that's the way he's going. Whereas my best friend's daughter, apart from being named after Clara Schumann, Clara's being given books on feminism directed to 3-year-olds. So what is equal? There's toys about feminist stuff. Well, I've been sending things for Christmas and birthdays, and she's had science sets, space sets, make your own rocket, and I'm like, it doesn't have to just be pink, fluffy. She's really good at maths and thinking, so I'm like, send her what she's going to enjoy, and don't be restricted, because the marketing material, I mean, blue and pink did not come out of preference for gender.
Exactly.
It's out of a marketing preference in the States and Canada to sell things, and if you had different colours you would sell more, therefore you'd make more money more books basically for the amount of fabric you had. Because before that, we all wore the same type of dresses as a kid. We were mostly in white and greys. We didn't have that. It's capitalist culture gone insane.
Yep.
It's made money for bankers. And we've all bought into it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The soapbox is definitely growing next to me.
We have nearly finished our bachelor degrees now, so close. And we're about to embark as women into the music industry. Help. Looking back, what do you wish someone would have told you when you started embarking on this journey?
It's a really tough question. I have to say, I've been thinking about it since you sent the email, and it's not easy to answer. There's a couple of things I want to say, but I'm not sure it's a sufficient answer. In terms of, because I was performing, I wish someone had honestly told me how many hours it was going to need, because I was thinking about, a 2-hour gig with a warm-up, the interval, travel time. I was thinking about rehearsals, but the actual time of working, it's not just rehearsal in the ensemble, the rehearsal at home, the preparation time, the thinking through, was at least twice what I thought it was going to be. So I hadn't really appreciated the workload that I wasn't just doing when I was with everybody else, but what you invest yourself. I was never really at the time informed about the cost of public liability insurance, car insurance, and the amount of investment it takes before you can actually do these things. If you're going to be an entrepreneur or lead your own company or something, you have to invest before you start. So you need the laptop these days, you need the phone, you're going to have some form of transport, which means insurance, probably public liability insurance as well. Then you need your domain name, etc., etc. All that needs an initial investment. So you need to get the money from somewhere, which means we usually end up doing other forms of work before we can be self-sufficient in it. And I hadn't quite appreciated that aspect of it. That came as a shock to me. Although I may have just been naive and thought it was all going to be easy. I don't know. I do tend to about the positive first. I suppose I was very aware of the limitations of women in the industry, because having done my degree, I did my undergraduate degree at Huddersfield, and we had a module on women in music led by the composer Margaret Lucy Wilkins, and she'd really invested in us at this discussion about networking, not just in your own generational group, but make sure you have networks up and down across the generations. So those above, you can give tips down and you can keep giving tips, so that the network always has to be varied and not just the people you know and the people that are like you. Otherwise, you're just going to set up more barriers and reinstill them. So the broader networks meant more confidence. So I was very fortunate with that. And I think that is probably the biggest tip I could share with you, is about networking across the generations. But if you want something and you need something, also be prepared to offer it. So if you get any help from someone, then passing it on. Now I'm a great advocate for mentoring coaching. So as part of, I chaired the National Subject Association for Music in Higher Education for 4 years, vice chair before that, and we spoke a lot about mentoring. And now I've founded and co-chaired the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion for Music Studies in the UK, and we're setting up different mentoring groups. So basically, can't it co-mentoring, but the idea is if you've got somebody else you can speak to in confidence, who can hear you out, listen to you, maybe give an opinion, don't have to, but the act of talking to somebody else and verbalizing something so you hear it and then you think about it again is hugely important. If you are paying a coach, that's hugely expensive, but if we're skill sharing and supporting each other, it doesn't need to cost anything. It's some of the most valuable time that someone can give you is in mentoring, and there's so many policies and processes for that now. There's industry mentoring schemes. There's a new scheme set up by the Royal Musical Association's just been launched as well. Ethnomusicology Forum's just launched one, and the LGBTQ plus working group is also just launched a mentoring scheme. So there's lots of things in music now doing this, but I think it's not being afraid to ask for help. My worry, looking back over the last sort of 2 decades and a bit, it always felt like it was a problem if you needed help, or it was not the done thing to ask for it. I've always just asked. I think something with the way I've been brought up in the cultural context, I don't know, it was just normal to ask, but I was very conscious friends and colleagues wouldn't, because they didn't want it to be seen as a weakness, whereas I've always seen someone asking for help as a strength and applauded that, because it's not easy to ask if you don't know something or you need the support. So ask, always ask. And if you've got an opinion, don't hold it in when you're in a meeting. even if you sit in meetings where you say something and then 10 minutes later you hear a man say it, and someone go, "Oh, that's a good idea." There and go, "I just said that. Oh, excuse me, did you not hear me 5 minutes ago?" I mean, literally now, it's taken me years to think, right, just say it. Sorry, I'm sure you must have missed what I said there. Call it out, because if you call it out, someone will stop doing it because they'll be embarrassed. You can do it politely and professionally, but call it out because the person wouldn't want that happening to them. You've sort of got to put your head above the parapet is the phrase, isn't it? I think everyone's a little bit worried if you stand up out of the trench that your head will be shot off, but if you don't stand up out of the trench, then no one ever sees you either. So you've got to sort of set your moral line in the sand where you want to cross. As long as you've got your morals and your ethics set up, you can work effectively, really.
That's so good.
It sounds like hard work, but it is a joy.
Yeah,
I have to say, you do things. This is why I love working at university, because I wanted to perform, wanted to write, wanted to travel, wanted to teach, wanted to do all these things, and there wasn't one industry where I could do it all. And then when I was at university, I realised that actually the colleagues were in industry, so being able to work for a music company and then perform and teach in a school, and all that has come together to enable me to do what I'm doing now. That's having, might be a little at this point, but at least I'm making some little national change with these institutions and groups that I've been on and set up with. And then from one thing, it rolls into an invite to support something else and what have you. So it's just, I suppose I'm just carrying on the networking comment.
That's so amazing. You are such a role model to us, and you are, and I think by us having, like you spoke about, like the generational and the mentorship view and thoughts, I think by having that, like that can enable us to stand on your shoulders, and then having us doing the same for younger girls. And I think it's so much about creating this network.
I agree completely, and I always say about the fact, once you finish your degree, you don't finish the connection with colleagues. The idea is you go from being a student to being a peer and a colleague, isn't it? So that you're working together and carrying that on. It's important.
Okay, Helen, where can we find you if you want to look into your work or your radio shows?
Okay,
do you have some pages?
I do. I have plenty of pages. The easiest is probably going to helenjuliaminors.com. So that's my website with most things on. Some bits are still being built, but it's all on there. If you go to mixcloud.com/Helen Julia Minors, you'll get all my radio shows. I've got my Kingston profile page, and on that it also will take you to the academia page, all my publications, and the ORCID page, which is like the metric website for academics. I've also got a Google Scholar account, so you can see all the publications, who's cited me, how I've cited them. You've got all the metrics for that. My EDI group is edimusicstudies.org.uk, and then the Music Association is musiche.org.uk, and then Radio Way is Radio Way, spelt with an e.org.uk. And then the WRPM, I can't remember. I'm actually going to have to look. If you're interested in where I first started working, it's under Goldsmiths. It's gold.ac.uk/library/special-collections/WRPM collection.
Thank you so much for listening in to today's podcast here at the Ronnie and Sofie podcast. Let us know in the comment section below, do you have any experiences of being a woman in the music business or maybe any other business? Maybe you have kids or children. Do you have any thoughts about what we talked about in how to get your kids more involved in music making? If you do want to get to know us better, you can head over to the kingstoncase.wix.com. We post more blogs about what we just talked about today. And just get in touch if you want to. We're very, very much looking forward to talking to you. Thank you.